doing my sister-in-law's old playhouse for my daughters.
I'm so tired of seeing things like this. Like, we're literally entering an economic collapse. That's why there's now hiring signs everywhere, because no one wants to work for unlivable wages. If you go to grocery stores in low-income neighborhoods right now, the food, like the fresh food produce, is moldy and old and gross most of the time, if not almost out the door. I really don't want to see this on my For You page. I don't want to see it. I don't care about rich white peopling. I don't care. I really don't care. I really don't care. I don't care. If you're gonna post something like that, I also want you to, like, say something along the lines of, hey, comment your fucking Cash App so I can help you out, instead of just flexing my life in the middle of a nearing economic collapse.
Today is July 20th, 2021, and here is your Line 3 update. Earlier today, Enbridge caused its second spill just 2 weeks after the first one. There isn't a lot of information I could find about the material that was spilled, but it is most likely toxic and most likely killing thousands of organisms. In case you missed it, this is what the first spill looked like. This is where they spilled drilling mud into the Willow River after drilling carelessly and drilling through an aquifer, releasing an unknown amount of this toxic material upstream from where I, along with other protesters, were sitting for hours, which undeniably killed countless creatures living inside of that river. In other news, this morning at the Shell City Township, 3 water protectors locked down onto one of Enbridge's horizontal directional drills, postponing drilling for today. And apparently Enbridge has decided that the time is now to drill. This is a photo from this morning from the Red Lake Treaty Camp. This river crossing is also going to be the longest river crossing of the pipeline. So if you are seeing this and you are financially, emotionally, and responsibly able to make it to the front lines in Minnesota, this is your sign to do it. These are the days that we have been preparing for months. This pipeline is more than 60% complete. And if you are seeing this and you are not able to make it to the front lines, please dedicate your time to talking to your officials, contacting the White House, telling your friends and family about Line 3, making videos on Line 3, just talking about Line 3, and doing more than just signing a petition, then that is work that is greatly, greatly appreciated. And here are some social media pages that I highly, highly, highly recommend you check out in order to stay updated about Line 3.
Bonjour, Giwaden here! I don't really talk like that, but hello, it's Giwaden, Northwind. And this video is just a call to action for those who can get their asses out here and support the movement, support us. Skoden! Come to Red Lake Treaty Camp, Camp Migazi. Welcome water protectors in Palisade. Click the link in my bio and just go ham on Honor the Earth, GNU Collective, StopLine3.org. And follow all of those Instagrams I put in there. Camp Migazi, Red Lake Treaty Camp, resist_line_3. 3! Fucking nay, don't even listen to my videos.
ICE force-fed immigrants who went on hunger strike to protest the poor conditions at an ICE detention center, according to a new report. As a plastic feeding tube was forced down John Oteño's nose, he felt a wave of humiliation come over him. 28-year-old asylum seeker said he did his best to fight back against the 6 officers and 3 nurses who surrounded him, but he was sedated and handcuffed to a stretcher. Oteño was force-fed by GEO staff, which is a private prison company that runs a lot of ICE detention centers and which ICE pays to detain immigrants. This was Oteño's second hunger strike, and the protests were a last resort to negotiate the release of asylum seekers. The asylum seeker that is mentioned is not named Oteño. He was given an alias to protect his identity in case of ICE wanting to punish him. Oteño is not the only immigrant to be force-fed by immigration authorities, according to the ACLU and the Physicians for Human Rights. Court documents reveal that ICE has force-fed immigrants nearly 15 times from August 2015 to August 2017. ICE has also limited water access to stop hunger strikes.
Your favorite anti-racist influencers on this app are probably doing more to uphold the status quo.
Facts. But I don't know if TikTok is a platform to have this discussion on, but let's attempt to have it anyways. Liberals have this habit of taking radical language and slogans and declawing them of their original radical roots. Think of liberals when they say ACAB and they're like, well, when I say ACAB, I don't mean your uncle that's a cop. No, honey, we do mean your uncle that's a cop. While some may say, oh, well, this co-optation is just a way for us to make ourselves more palatable and marketable so we can actually get stuff done. But if you sacrifice and erase the integrity of the meaning behind the word or slogan to become more palatable, you're just serving the status quo, which means we're really not getting anything done.
I hate when we're talking about, like, racism and, all the bad shit that's happened in American history, as pertaining to black people. And then someone comes in like, my ancestors never did that. I'm Italian. Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea. You're not innocent either.
So, like, what are you putting down? I don't know, man. I put down the Hispanic and Latino background, but I'm like, I don't know what the race is.
Race. Hispanic. That is ethnicity. Your race. What do you identify as? Latino.
Y'all are annoying. Like, it's really not that difficult to understand this shit. Like, race and ethnicity are different things, all that jazz. White Latinos exist, black Latinos exist, indigenous Latinos exist. In the second video, the person even shows, like, the second person will correct them and be like, oh, like, Latino is ethnicity, what is your race? And yet the creator goes on to, like, make the joke that even upon being corrected, they will not put white as their race.
So I understand what you're saying, and this is actually a huge conversation that we've been having on Native and Indigenous TikTok. So there are a couple points. The first one is that a lot of people who are considered to be Latinos or Hispanic are in reality not Latinos or Hispanic. They're actually indigenous people who have been disconnected from their identity. And that's a whole other thing that we can go into another time. I have videos and some other people have videos. Another thing that I want to hit on is that personally, I've never met anybody who's indigenous from modern day Latin America or the Caribbean actually refer to themselves as Latino or Hispanic. They refer to themselves as purely indigenous. Or they specify where they come from, like Taino, Purepecha. All of the different indigenous peoples, they'll specify. I've never met somebody who actually calls themselves an indigenous Latino. The other thing is in our community at least what I've seen commonly, is if you're mixed with white, that doesn't make you any less native or indigenous. You, regardless of how pale you are. Something commonly that I've talked about, and other people I've talked about, is when it comes to being white, there's a difference between being white and being pale. Are you pale? Probably because you're mixed with white? Probably. But it doesn't take into consideration that the majority of people who are from Central America, South America that I've met, who are indigenous people, are very fair-skinned, even though they grew up with their culture. I saw people in your comments who are lighter skin or fair skin, who are 100% indigenous in terms of growing up with their culture, regardless if they're mixed. And also FYI, the majority, if not all, indigenous people are mixed. And I'm not disregarding that we have some indigenous people who are mixed with white and who are fair skinned and could pass off as white. But saying that you're white just because you're pale disregards any race's indigeneity. And we don't need any more of that.
Queens, because both were in the hospital with no report. And that's how you guys work. Is everybody out? You know?
That's a violation.
Oh. Sir, what are you doing? Back up. Do me a favor, back up.
天空のライアーを手に入れたのは酔っ払い相手に歌を聴かせるためなのかよ。
Black trauma books and films exist to continue the education of white people in a white supremacist society. Stay with me. I don't think that white people need to be educated on the crimes against humanity that they and their forefathers have carried out against Black people and Black bodies. That is alive and well in their collective memory and is evidenced over and over again by their collective actions. But we cannot forget that a necessary component of white supremacy is theater, and all theater needs an audience. Of course, there must be some assemblage of Black and non-white individuals to serve as an unwilling audience, but there also must be an audience of white people. We also cannot forget that white people have been asking Black people to chronicle our pain and our trauma since they've been subjugating us, and that Black trauma content doesn't teach Black people anything we don't already know. And with all of that information together, we understand that Black trauma books and films exist to teach white people 3 things. Number 1, that violence against Black bodies, exists at least in part for their entertainment. Number 2, that violence against Black bodies is the surest way to maintain the status quo. And number 3, that violence against Black bodies will frequently, if not always, turn a profit. And so even white people who are unwilling to act out the violence themselves learned that they can be entertained by violence against Black bodies, that they can be comforted even by violence against Black bodies, and finally that they can make money if they are willing to stomach violence against Black bodies. And that is why I say,
the ways that white people raise their children that are unique to white people.
Okay, I've been thinking about this for days. I'm sure someone else has better words to explain it, but I'm gonna try. I grew up around only conservative Republican white people, and I feel like there's this thing with a lot of families where they're not connected to any particular culture. So to try to replace that, they will try to build their own culture and their own tradition within the immediate family, but it doesn't mean anything. Like every Christmas, my family puts this little wooden parrot that's attached to a clothespin at the top of the Christmas tree, and it holds no emotional relevance to anyone. It does not mean anything. We've just been doing it for years just to have something to do every year. And that's harmless, but where I see it turn south is like they want to construct this like pseudo sense of honor, and it's like they think they can get that by making something to protect even though no one's attacking them. But it's never real or relevant. Like, it's never like, oh, my dad does this beautiful craft and he taught me how to do it and I'd really like to keep it in the family name, so I'm gonna take over his business. It's always like, well, my dad was a cop, so he really wants me to be a cop, and I guess I'm just gonna keep it in the family. A big red flag for me is when the family is obsessed with their last name and mentions it all the time. What can I say? I'm just a Murphy. Murphys are crazy. We're crazy. They'll even start excusing each other's behaviors, like, what can you expect from him? He's a Murphy. You know how in Shameless, every other fucking sentence, someone is like, well, that's what it means to be a Gallagher. That might be true for some people, but you're a Gallagher. That's just the price you pay for being a Gallagher. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I would genuinely call it like a clan mentality. It's that kind of thing where they'll tell you like no one else is ever going to love you in the same way that we do, and you're never going to be able to trust anyone in the same way that we do, and no matter where you go and no matter who you meet, at the end of the day, you're only ever going to have your family to come back to. When that is not even true. You know, I've seen a lot of people stitch this video and say like, white people don't provide for their kids because there is no culture, there is no tradition, and we're all growing up under capitalism. So everything's just very individualized, and we're all only working towards our individual goals. There's no like family goal anyone's working towards. As soon as any of the kids get married, that immediate family cycle will just start again, and there's this huge sense of detachment. Like, there's really just not much there but blood. But they will use that to manipulate you. They expect their daughters to forgive the unforgivable from their brothers and fathers because we're all family. We have to be a united family front. We have to stick together because we're a family. They want you to look the other way from their hatefulness and brush off their abuse because we're all just family. And it's like, I don't think we know what family is or how to do it, to be honest with you. You can't create a culture between 4 to 8 people. That just gets super fucking toxic super fucking fast because nothing's been like set up well over time. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
In response to the protests in Cuba, the White House released a statement by Joe Biden. Basically said that the United States stands in solidarity with the Cuban people and that the Cuban regime needs to go ahead and listen to its people like we're trying to do over here in the US and stop enriching themselves. And given the material conditions of Cuba right now, I believe the people have every right to protest. I mean, there are food shortages and not enough syringes to go around to go ahead and administer the vaccines that Cuba has developed. I think one thing that heavily contributes to those material conditions is the 80-year-long embargo the United States was asked to lift by the UN last month and voted not to. So how about the United States regime stands in solidarity with the Cuban people by lifting the embargo that 184 other countries asked it to lift, rather than just virtue signaling with some statement.
Did. Veganism is about the abstinence of certain egregious actions in egregious circumstances.
Yeah. Sometime during when I was like 5 or 6, my parents used to take me out to the fields with them, because it's really hard to find a babysitter when you're like a year into being a new person in the United States. And I wasn't the only student who was like the only kid who was taken out there. A lot of other parents were also taking their kids out there because, you know, like I said, no babysitters. And we didn't realize that they would be spraying pesticides that day. So now I and a lot of other kids who were my age at the time use one of these, pretty often, just so that we don't die. White vegans love to push the idea that, eating meat is abusive and eating, you know, having cultural practices where eating meat is a staple is abusive and whatnot. Completely forgetting and completely ignoring the actual indigenous undocumented people who are being exploited every day out on the fields. 2 weeks ago, the Pacific Northwest had a historic heat wave. It is cherry season right now, and that's one of the toughest seasons to work. People are working 10, 11 hours a day, picking cherries, packing cherries in warehouses. These people, undocumented people, still had to work during that time. You had people starting at 2 a.m., ending at 8 a.m. so that the shipments could still be met. Veganism is not without exploitation, okay? Veganism is not without exploitation. And thinking that you are at some moral superiority just because, you know, you don't eat animals or whatever, while still ignoring the plight of actual human beings, is extremely hypocritical. So go fuck yourself. I'm gonna go get a McDonald's burger.
Okay, so I don't know how many of you were taught this in history class, but about how the Spanish knew about the Incan Empire. But basically, the way I remember it being taught to me was the Spanish found out from some random native people that there was a place with a lot of gold if you went south. Which gives the impression that it went like, hey, do you know where I can find more gold? Grandma told me a bedtime story once of gold if you just walk down south a lot. Oh, I'll go find that then. Which, needless to say, is not how it went. And I find it interesting that the Spaniards who talked to the people about where these places were are almost always named, but the people that they talked to are almost never named. So just a reminder, the person who told the Spanish about the Incan Empire was Panquiaco, who was the son of Cacique Comagre, who was a very powerful chief in what's now Panama.
What's the most, chronically online take you've ever seen on the internet?
When that white girl on Twitter was like, bisexuals are so invisible, we don't even have our own slur. Any queer discourse started by a white person is guaranteed to be a nightmare from the jump. Because white people don't understand that just because something might have some truth or validity to it, that doesn't mean that it's not a really obnoxious thing to say. Because I'm bisexual, and so I get your point. I understand that you are trying to talk about the lack of bi visibility. That doesn't make it not intensely annoying for some white girl on the internet to get up and complain about the fact that she's not being hate crimed in the way she wants to. Not when there is a whole big real world of people being called slurs. Oh god, is there gonna be slur discourse in my comments? Block button at the ready. Let's
see that the world is big, you see the atmosphere is small, you see that there are no boundaries, no lines, no national state. This world is full of not enough unifiers and too many vilifiers. And when you get up there, you see that we are one world. This is one planet.
Ironically enough, you'd probably call me a vilifier for saying this, when in reality, I would argue that you are the vilifier, Jeff Bezos. You took a 10-minute flight to space that cost billions of dollars, which was just a pissing contest with another billionaire to stroke your ego. And for what? Meanwhile, you pay your workers slave wages, and you actively destroy the planet, the same one that you were looking at from space. Capitalism is quite literally destroying our planet and making it uninhabitable for humans. So I hope that your 600 seconds in space fulfilled you in a way that makes your pointless existence meaningful. You are the evil. You are everything wrong with this world. Before anybody comes in and says, well, he earned his money, it's his money. No. He sat back and exploited the laborers that made his life possible.
This is how I spent my morning. Sitting in a tree watching my people's land being disrespected.
My personalized, racialized life experience is only proof of how, not phenotypical race is. Race cannot be defined by just features. Because here in the States, I have friends who thought I was fully Asian before I told them I was half white. And see me as very Asian, very Taiwanese. I'm very connected to my culture. Yet in Taiwan, when I'm visiting my family, I'm seen as a foreigner. People are surprised when they find out that I speak Chinese. I'm very fetishized for being half white in Taiwan. People treat me differently. I'll just be out in public and people will walk past me speaking Chinese, assuming I don't know what they're talking about, talking about my race. And it's I'm too Asian for the white kids and too white for the Asian kids. But then my experience in America is very much of an Asian American person, no matter how white passing I may appear to be. Feel free to debate my race in the comments, because y'all like to do that too.
You want to know what my pronouns are? Proud American! Build the freaking wall! Hi, thanks.
So this comment reminded me of a little blip from a long poem-ish thing I wrote back in 2019 when I was really grappling with being a misogyny-affected person and wanting to be more masculine. And I said, is this how I am to live now? With this privilege neither earned nor inherited, I might make it through a bathroom or a grocery store, but I will never pass in a circle of men. I get close, but constantly single myself out by standing against misogyny. It's not usually that they don't agree with me, but silencing laughter with a simple phrase that's not funny is not something that happens absent of girls raised to carry pepper spray wherever they go because violence is a daily expectation. They stare at me and remember that I am not one of the guys. They can't really relax because 2 out of 4 of them have made me so uncomfortable that I had to have one of those unfortunate conversations with them. You know, the ones that always start with you assuring them that you know they didn't mean it, that you know they're a nice guy. This was before I cut my hair. Women will ask me, well, why do you still talk to those guys? Why do you still talk to your dad? Your brother? These men aren't predators. They just don't want to be excluded from the table of big shiny teeth and powerful fists. And I hate the way I understand because sometimes I don't either.
POV, I'm one of those classic punks that started punk as a genre, but instead of becoming wiser as I got older, I became Republican. Yeah, I'm a capitalist. I'm a
Okay, you guys, so listen, a lot of you want to help with Line 3 and you don't know how. You can't afford to help donate with funds, and that's okay. You can't really be there for whatever reason, and that's okay. Here's a couple ways you can help.
Divest from banks that support this pipeline. I mean, that's pretty easy. Write letters to the White House.
Hell yeah, make calls to the White House. Call them and annoy the hell out of them. Tell your government to stop fucking murdering people. It seems simple enough, right? We don't go around killing everybody. That's right. And with these new laws, the government's literally saying it's okay to take a human life off the earth in order to save money. If that's not okay with you, call them, annoy them, write them every single day. And we love you guys. We love you guys. And you guys help us stay going.
I don't think we understand how wild the 1920s to 1970s were. Like your locomotive bitch-ass husband Quincy could have literally said, I'm going to go get milk. I know it's a joke now, but he could have literally said, I'm going to go get milk and never come back. But he's not going across the country. No, he's going 16 houses down to Peggy and the 8 kids that she had with him. How do women find peace back then? I would have dragged Peggy's ass to the local diner and people just start throwing quarters. Like they betting on fights. You know, everything cost like 10 cents back then. I would say I would get Quincy's ass, but his name is Quincy. And don't think I ain't forget about those people that were like, I want to go back to the 1950s where you can do drive-in movies and drink milkshakes, where true love was alive, where my grandparents met. Bitch, at least you can go to the front entrance to get that damn milkshake. And second, let's not forget, in closed doors, James Buchanan, the light post manager, was whooping Cheryl's ass for not whipping them mashed potatoes right.
I feel like the primary reason why hip-hop has generally stayed close to the black community is because it creates the shock value needed for white people not to colonize it. It also focuses on topics that are more closely related to the black community, so a white person isn't going to feel as inclined to talk about them. It's important to remember that hip-hop was created to talk about black issues, and that's evident by the presence of anti-establishment themes as early on as when it was first created. People viewed hip-hop as a means of radicalizing black people against white people. Whether or not you believe that is true is irrelevant because the shock value alone is enough to deter white people from invading the genre. The F12, F the system rhetoric that you see so prevalent as hip-hop is something that mostly only black people can relate to, so mostly only black people are going to rap about it. Other black created genres like rock that you mentioned don't have the same overt and blatant, sometimes even considered vulgar, exposing of the inequality in the system that we live in. And by that fact alone hasn't stayed as close to the black community as hip-hop has. Because remember, white people can only colonize what they feel comfortable confiding in. So if hip-hop continues to evoke white discomfort, it will continue to be black dominated. It's important to recognize that the more that we have gotten away from our original black struggle themes, and the more that we started talking about themes such as women and drugs, the more that white people have felt comfortable coming into the genre. I hope that answered your question.
ABFTP. All cops are bastards. Fuck the police. Hey, hey,
Okay. Go for it.
That's what you're feeling while you're out here today.
So I'm out here today for the people, the planet, the water. This pipeline is violating treaties and it's an assault to the folks on this land. I'm here to stand with people and protect the water and stop the pipeline.
Awesome, thank you.
What the PL has told me, we are only talking with the PL, but what the PL has informed me that the cop was wondering what our
enjoy the rest of the week, talk with your family if you have one, and reconsider life choices. Maybe come out here with us.
This is for real how some of you sound. Hey, I'm not really comfortable with this certain thing, considering the context. So you want segregation? What? We bringing segregation back? You want segregation? I'm just saying, considering the context of this certain thing and the history. You trying to bring back the colored bathrooms? What? You trying to go back to the back of the bus? You want them dirty blacks only water fountain backs? You trying to end up back in shackles? Relax. Back on the plantains? I'll send my dogs out.
Could you imagine if Jeff Bezos locked himself in a tower and then decades later a young boy in search of a truffula tree stumbled upon the tower, and after telling the story of his capitalist conquest, Jeff Bezos gave the boy one puny seed in hopes that it would restore the world to what it had once been?
That wasn't real. Who cares?
Don't say that. Please don't say that. It was real. It was real to me.
Okay, y'all, we're gonna sit down and have ourselves a conversation about this one. I personally just think that this is a way too simplified way to think about race that, in my experience, has erased a lot of people's indigeneity, including my own. First and foremost, I think you should not be calling out somebody who is claiming an ethnicity or a heritage unless you are of that heritage. You should let the people who are of that community call them out if they so choose to. I think this line of thinking also does a lot of damage during a time when a lot of us are trying to reclaim our indigeneity. I get so many people in my comments asking me if they're white passing, telling me people tried to call them white passing, and so I look through their videos, I look at the profile pictures, and I'm just furious because I know y'all don't see us, but I see us. We recognize each other. This line of thinking is also very conditional on where you are in this world. Speaking for myself, I was never white passing until I got on this app, and I think what that says about this society is that you do not know how to recognize indigenous features. It's not until I start talking about my indigeneity that I get hit with the, oh, but you're white too. No. I don't think I have any white features. I know I have colonizer DNA because I know history, but I don't think I have any white features. My eyes get me mistaken for Asian. My hair, braided or not, is not that of a white woman's. My lips have melanated hyperpigmentation on the corners. They're also just like plump, but like a natural plump that a white woman doesn't always have. And my bone structure is very recognizably of indigeneity if you are indigenous. I have no problem being recognized by my community. But somehow, white people want to call me white. Well, it's not your place, first of all. And you look like a dumbass. I think if you're a person of color and you're in a white area and you're going to be either perceived as white or othered, I think that's entirely dependent on whether or not you assimilate to whiteness. Not necessarily with your features or whatever you do externally, but with your behavior and your action, like the way that you interact with white people. Personally, I grew up in a majority minority area, and therefore I have a whole lifetime's worth of experience of being alienated by whiteness. So when I went to college, I wasn't able to knock elbows with a white woman, and they were very uncomfortable with me for it. It didn't matter how much I volunteered, it didn't matter how much I helped out and actually did stuff for the community. It was a white woman in charge, and therefore a couple of times I wasn't able to move up when I wanted to and deserved it more than the people who they did choose. Y'all, one time I even applied for a diversity advocate and they chose a white girl from a Catholic private school.
What do you mean the actual restrooms? Come on, man. Dude, take the bottle. Look, only 2 people have gone so far. It's like plenty of room in here. All right, I'm already 10 seconds into my 20-second break, and I'm thirsty, so if you're not going to use this. Oh yeah, no, we don't get water breaks either.
So I'm not sure we're talking about the same people or maybe the same issue. Speaking for myself only, I have experienced systemic racism my entire life. Racism is a system, but I only experienced colorism as a child. And that is what I mean when I say that racism and race is just so complicated. People don't understand that race can flip on a dime, like racial identity, ethnic identity. Yes, racial identity can flip on a dime. I know that personally because it did for me. My entire life, I was just Mexican. That's it. I didn't even know what Latino was until I was 17 years old, and I'm 22, y'all. Now, in my community, the racial binary looked more like white, Mexican, and schools were very much so segregated that way. Now, because I only experienced colorism as a child, I didn't even recognize that it was colorism until like months ago. Somewhere along the line, I don't go out in the sun because of lifestyle, you know, but in 10 years, that could also change. My lifestyle could change and I'll experience colorism again. But at this point in time, I fully recognize that I don't experience it, and that is why I don't identify as brown. When there are a lot of people in our community when they're the same shade range and they do identify as brown. For a very short period of time, I even identified as politically brown, and yes, I know it's embarrassing. But I did that because that was the only way I knew how to describe the fact that I was experiencing systemic racism. It's just the fact that when I get on this app and I start talking about issues pertaining to my community that are systemic racism issues, I get hit at the exact same fucking time, somehow, with racism and, oh, you're white. White people choose their tools. They absolutely choose their tools. And if they decide that they're not going to come at you with outward racism, then they're going to try to invalidate what you're saying by invalidating your heritage. But is it their place to try and disregard my place to say? No, it's not. But you're right. I do think we need to call out the people who use this ancestry to make bullshit conservative takes. I just think that we only ever see Latinx is not a race used to include white Latinx and to invalidate people who are mixed and their indigeneity. Even though personally, I can just look at somebody in our community. They may not be brown, they may be brown, I don't know. But they don't have to be for me to recognize their indigeneity, their indigenous features. And I could be wrong. There are Taylor Lautners out there, there are Miranda Cosgroves out there, but at least I did not invalidate somebody's heritage when they're telling us that they're indigenous.
You know, I think Luz learned Spanish before she learned English. Oh yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Oh wow, I'm so glad we can. And she was an illegal immigrant. Huh? Yeah, I mean, she learned Spanish before she learned English, so she was an illegal immigrant. No.
Most likely, you're not white.
I think we need to get rid of race as a system as a whole in the United States. That man you just saw in the beginning of the video descends from an Italian Catholic family, and he notices how his definition and cultural identity of being white wasn't initially there when he was younger. Whiteness has expanded over the years to include more ethnic categories, and this is super dangerous. Because what race does is it homogenizes people, and in the United States, whenever we have to apply or do anything, you have to put down your race. And so people are starting to really identify with their race. And so they're starting to think that race equals culture here in the United States when it actually doesn't. And that's why when we get on this app and you see Americans talk about black issues, white issues, the rest of the world kind of looks at us confused. Because as they generally recognize people for their culture, we've been superficially identifying people. And so as people, we really need to deconstruct our view of race, because if we don't recognize people for their culture and their race, we're really limiting our understanding of them.
Oh, this is a hot take I don't see enough language on. Let's talk about how research, when they're evaluating differences across racial groups, like to account for race-based disparity in a whole bunch of different sectors, Asians as a whole, South Asians, West Asians, East Asians, are all grouped together, even though we have so many phenotypic differences that could potentially either benefit us or be detrimental to us within the research that is being studied. Even though we all are Asian, phenotypically, South Asian features have made us more hyper-masculinized, and East Asians experience more hyper-femininization. Let's say, for instance, that we looked at a study on pregnancy, and there was a statistic that Asian women were blank likely to survive during a pregnancy. That does not take into account whatsoever how treatment would be different between light-skinned East Asian women versus dark-skinned West Asian and South Asian women. It's a little problematic, love.
All the people in my warehouse, always wanting more. So I'm going to give them something to live for. I'm gonna go to space, feed them some inspiration. I'll go to space, fill their imagination. When they're pooping in their cup, they just have to look up and see me flying through space.
Oh yeah, let's talk about Egyptology for a minute, shall we? Some of y'all are gonna look at me funny for this, but the fact that the only great African kingdom that you ever hear about is ancient Egypt is a product of white supremacy. Especially since white people consistently try to take credit for Egypt. It certainly figures they would gravitate towards the country that had so much interaction with places like Greece. You don't hear about sub-Saharan African kingdoms. Not much chat about the kingdoms of Mali or Ghana or Nigeria. Because we just can't abide by the idea that any African nation can be great without some white folk help. Not to mention the fact that white folks try to take all the credit for Egypt anyway. I have been attempted to be convinced that Egyptians were actually white on more than one occasion. A mutual of mine made a video about this recently, and I completely agree. Hoteps, let go of Egypt. There's so much more out there, my brother.
detached sidewalk with mature trees and shade and relaxation, and now on a broken sidewalk, butting up to an arterial street. So we're coming from a wealthy neighborhood. This is a class issue. We're coming from a neighborhood where people have tons of unnecessary choices. And this is the reality here, that people who have no choice but to be walking or using a wheelchair, this is what they face. Bus stops, practical trips, grocery, commercial, zoning that has buildings that host services and places that people need to go. So they're thrown on the edge, an attached, hardly sidewalk, sprayed by cars, exhaust, and speed. It's violent.
Okay, so I love The Good Place so much, but there's just certain parts where I'm just like, damn, this shit really was written by a white person, I swear to God. Like, specifically with this character, Mr. I'm super cultured, Mr. I can speak 7 languages, Mr. I was born in Nigeria and raised in Senegal, Mr. Respectability Politics, okay? Like, throughout, like, the 4 seasons I think that show was on, he never referenced any African philosophers. I don't think so. And just kept talking about Kant all the fucking time. Like, another thing that pissed me off about The Good Place was like the capitalism part. Like, spoiler alert, the reason why all of these, like, you know, average people were going to hell was because even if they did do good things, because of capitalism, regardless of what good that they did, there would always be a little bit of exploitation added onto it. But like, for some reason, the judge wanted to go for like the eco-fascist route and just restart everything. Like, the show gets a lot of points for diversity, but like, these are essentially white characters. There's no cultural references. The only like race talk that we got was like from this asshole right here, and a lot of it was more or less sexism. Like, again, I love the show. I think it does a lot of stuff right, okay? I understand the message that it was trying to portray, but it's like, there's just certain things where I'm just like, oh, brother!
Was everyone aware? I'm sorry, I have white shit on my teeth. Is everyone aware that this is a real thing that happened when Jeffrey Bezos came back? When Jeffrey Bezos came back from space, he was talking about whatever he did up there, and he literally said in public, in front of many cameras, that he wanted to thank all of the workers and all the customers of Amazon because we're the ones who paid for it. The absolute audacity of this man. I want to hit him. I just want to punch him square in the face. I want to punch him in the face so bad. It's like ready. It's ready at all times.
Do any other people feel like white queer people are really obsessed with trying to make queerness and transness like the same as being a person of color? I know, like, I feel like people of color talk about this a lot, but I mean, like, this like weird kind of obsession with trying to make, especially like discrimination, exist in the same way. I feel really weird. I think it's kind of funny how many white queer people feel like their queer culture is being appropriated because like straight girls use the She-Ra audio. Like, number one, I think we forget that like identity is not static the way that race is. If you're not born a person of color, you will never be, but that's not true for like cishetness. Cutoff time for whiteness is birth. And the cutoff time for being queer is never, right? Like, you can come out as queer at 80. It's really interesting how so many queer people assume that it's always like cis-hets trying to take something. Those are people who are not yet queer, seeking community for something they haven't yet realized.
Hey, we're coming at you from the Red Lake Treaty Camp, and I just want to remind all of my chronically online leftists, if you're sitting at home debating theory and asking questions like, when's the revolution gonna happen? But you are not at places like this, you are not donating, you are missing the fact that the revolution is happening right now. Water protectors, non-Indigenous and Indigenous allies coming together to protest against a multinational oil corporation going through sovereign treaty land. So if you're asking yourself, When's the revolution happening? I'd say it's happening right now, and you're just not part of it.
Yeah, so come join how you can. We are here. If you can't make it here, donate please, and support and spread the word.
You can check the links in my bio. A water protector was arrested last night. I'm gonna put the bail fund down below.
Today is July 19th, 2021, and here is your Line 3 update, except in fun lighting because this app is freaking superficial. Today at the Shell River, 7 female water protectors were arrested and zip-tied by police. Dozens of water protectors gathered at the Shell River to sit in peaceful prayer in opposition of further construction by Enbridge. Meanwhile, Enbridge worked in cooperation with the Department of Natural Resources in order to circumvent and evade the original intent of the water permits in which they were granted. In case you are unaware, currently Minnesota is on a level 3 drought, which is on a 4-level scale, and Enbridge just paid $150 million for 5 billion gallons of water from the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River. In other news, the state of Minnesota is now paying Enbridge more than $45 million for overtaxing them in the past. And this money will come out of the budget of 13 Minnesotan counties. So the state of Minnesota is quite literally valuing the importance of a pipeline from a foreign company more than the actual people that live there. Meanwhile, at the Middle River near Red Lake Nation, Sasha Bulio led other water protectors for an action and called upon the U.S. government to honor the 1863 treaty rights. However, while occupying this space, water protectors spotted a full range of drilling equipment, meaning that Enbridge is planning to drill underwater ways right now. Tribal monitor Sasha saw fish jumping to the top of the water, caught with nowhere to go, and there was also an oily sheen at the top. Here is an image as to what a drilling pump looks like, and as you can tell, Enbridge is nearly completely pumping these water bodies completely dry. This extreme drought in combination with the heat has caused an exponential die-off of mussels in these rivers. In case you're unaware, mussels are a great indicator of the health of rivers and other bodies of water. They serve as ecosystem engineers and are crucial for making habitats more suitable for themselves and other organisms. If you're interested in coming to the front lines in northern Minnesota, please check out the resources in my bio. Otherwise, I highly recommend staying updated and following these pages on social media. At Honor the Earth on Instagram, also on Facebook, the GNU Collective on Instagram, Welcome Water Protectors on Instagram and on Facebook, as well as Camp McGeezy on Instagram, resist_line_3, and Tara Hauska on Instagram. I almost forgot Red Lake Treaty Camp on Facebook as well.
So I've noticed that some people are scared to revolt because they fear the government might kill us in the process.
I mean, if we want to think about it that way, which honestly in some cases we should, we are already dying. We're dying from climate change because we're not able to do anything, because we haven't been fighting these big corporations, because we haven't been fighting these governments who are passing laws so that they are able to lobby and so that they are able to make absolutely awful decisions that affect us personally. We are already dying. We are already paying the price for this. So why not instead give our lives for a cause that helps us, that helps our earth? Because you're going to die of mental health issues. You're going to die of illnesses. You're going to die of from climate change. You're going to die from all of these things, and they're all going to be directly related to something we could prevent. We could work on preventing. So why not? Because people are going to die anyways, why not lay down our lives for something that we want instead?
Anin Giwaden Indigenous Cause Makuan Dundin. Hello, my name is Northwind and I am Bearcorn. And what I am looking at is a complete disregard for treaty rights. A foreign multinational oil company prepping to drill under one of the sacred rivers of the Anishinaabeg. The tar sands oil that will be shooting through this pipeline is being sent over to China for foreign economy. So the US is just assuming all of the risk. Minnesota and its people are assuming all of the risk.
Hi, okay, do not swipe. I just want to take one moment of your time. This is not a paid advertisement by a TikTok or nothing like that. I might get shadow banned, but you know what? This is very important, okay? So Marie Wilcox, if you don't know who she is, go ahead and Google her. Again, her name is Marie Wilcox. She's trying to get access to some of her ancestral land. And so I just wanted to share this information because I think it's important in order to get land back. You know, it's not just a hashtag, it's actually happening. And so I just wanted to let you all know that, you know, $25,000 is the goal and we're only at 3,500. So even sharing this video and letting people know about it is a big help. You know, it'll take less than 5 seconds. Just share, please, and get the word out because, you know what, let's reach that goal. Let's get back our lands, you know, all over Indian country, starting with this GoFundMe, you know, or maybe let's help each other out by sharing and stuff. But yeah, so that's my plea. Thanks.
I'd like to start off by saying that Malcolm X was very correct about white liberals in the white moderate. Y'all are the biggest enemy to people of color I've ever seen. Roll the clip.
Let's talk about that leftist sound going around about breaking arms and how it's a gross misunderstanding of violence. So Zizek tells us that violence works in one of two ways. Either one side is able to do more violence than the other side can return, or one side is willing to accept more violence than the other side is willing to give. And so we know what the other side is willing to do. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen to George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. They will unalive people out in the open, in plain sight. And they expect to get away with it, and they often do.
And you think we should make friends with them?
But again, good job on that edgy TikTok. See,
I kind of skipped the rest of this stupid video. If you want to watch his shitty lib video, go to his page and watch it at this point, because I'm not going to entertain it anymore. I've seen it enough times today. Number one, you cannot point to a time in American history where violence wasn't enacted in some way, shape, or form to get what we needed to get done. You literally can't do it. Someone had to die for almost everything we have. Number two, I don't know why you think I should be out here defending fucking Nazis and trying to have conversations with them, but that tolerant left bullshit is over. I will not seek them out to do harm onto them, but if they seek me out, best believe I'll be breaking more than arms. There won't be any fucking talking. Talking is over with. You thinking that we can just talk to these people is just exposing your privilege. You wanting to be unified with these people is just exposing your privilege. Why do you think, what makes you think we would want to be unified with someone who could think that of us? Over something that I cannot control. Why do you want to be unified and build a society with these kinds of people? Malcolm X was right about y'all for sure. I'm done.
Tell me something a job has taught you that you will never ever forget no matter what.
Doesn't matter how nice or how good customer service you give to people, they will, just because you're a fast food worker, they will automatically not see you as a human being. I used to work for McDonald's, so I know that the strike is beyond fucking necessary. It is far overdue. I would literally have customers raving to me that I give amazing customer service and that they would want to come back just for me. That would make me happy, like, oh yes, even though working at that job was literally killing my autistic brain because of how overstimulating it is to be working behind the counter. It didn't matter because at the end of the day, the customers were allegedly always right, and if they were having a bad day, they would not even second guess about whether they should take it out on this innocent customer service person.
Why are leftists watching this Neil deGrasse Tyson versus Ben Shapiro debate? We don't need to have a debate on whether or not transgenderism is valid or whether or not they deserve rights. It just seems really reductive and dumb for us to be going back to that shit. Like, why do we need to debate them? Why are we even giving them a platform? Why don't we just, like, put on Neil deGrasse Tyson and only him? Or, how about this? We don't have two cisgender dudes talking about transgenderism. Huh?
Hey, what's going on over here? You guys having a little chit-chat? Yeah, well, I know we look slow and I know it looks clean, but it's not. There's a lot of different things for you guys to be doing right now. All right, we can find stuff to do. No, it looks clean, but it's not. So what I want you guys to do is pull this whole register encounter back. No, it comes back because I've seen it. So I want you to pull it back. We're going to do a whole sweep through. And then what I want you to do is, can you actually clean these ceilings? I think we have a ladder in the back. Because Samantha, our regional manager, she's going to come in next week and she's going to say something about that. If she doesn't say something about that, let me tell you, she's going to say something about that because I know Samantha. And that's going to be a pain to hear from her. So if we can actually get that done, if you guys can get all of this done while I'm working on the schedule in the back, while I have to sit down and work on that, I want you guys to be doing this.
Literally still laughing. This SOS Cuba person is claiming that this is a photo of Havana right now, and this is a photo of an independence rally in Catalonia, Barcelona, in 2016. Look at the Cuban people rising up against their communist dictatorship with Catalonian independence flag. Cisplau, cisplau. Puigdemont está en Cuba. If you gotta steal photos from another continent to prove that there's huge protests against your government, I don't think there's huge protests against your government, I'm gonna be honest. Funny shit is I know people that went to this march in 2016, like, it says Jordi. Solidarity with the freedom fighters of Barcelona, Cuba. Anyways.
Entiendo lo que hicimos hace 60 años y que esto es nuestro y que esto costó mucha vida y que más nunca volverá aquí el capitalismo y que estos mercenarios pagados por el imperio más nunca van a coger las calles nuestras.
But advocating for Puerto Rico statehood is not the progressive statement that you think it is.
That video reminded me of an interview I just did. I told you I'm working on a video about the Puerto Ricans who want independence for Puerto Rico. Well, I interviewed one of the leaders of that movement. I'm gonna play a clip of that interview for you. Tell me what you think.
Asumir que lo mejor que le puede pasar a un pueblo es asimilarse a otro. Es en el fondo, aunque haya en la superficie buenas intenciones, en el fondo es una visión profundamente racista que desprecia la capacidad de un pueblo y de su identidad nacional de echar para adelante en igual condiciones con las otras naciones del mundo.
Excuse my fucking acne, but I'm kind of glad people are saying this, because for a while there, I was thinking that it was normal for people to just grow up and hate minorities, like, ouch, but I wouldn't be surprised. But people are coming for her, like, we need to encourage betterment. Like, yeah, no one's saying that they shouldn't be better, but let's not make it seem like it's so normal.
Y'all want to know weird family history? My grandmother is 92, and she told me about how her mother, when she was 8, was literally stolen from her grandmother's house by a white judge, and like they forced her to be their housemaid, their everything. This is a dog. Hi, dog. And she slept behind the wood burning stove on a pile of hay. She spoke Yiddish and German because they were Jewish from Europe, and they like freed her when she was 21. Did not leave her anything. Didn't leave her a cent. Bro, I can't.
There's a lack of representation of the diversity of Latin America in fashion and the media. Not only are we represented by light-skinned people, but Mexico tends to be the face of us all. Let's remember to be supportive and patient with each other.
I've been dropping so much race content that I literally forgot that I'd be talking about econ in this account too, so let's get into it. One of the biggest I don't want to call it a problem, but one of the biggest obstacles that communism faces is failure to make this one thing digestible. Because honestly, I don't think it's impossible to spread class consciousness, nor do I think it's that hard to convince people of a classless and stateless society. But it's the moneyless thing that is so foreign to us that it's hard to make comprehensible. Because if you're going the Reformation route, that means everything you have to put out has to garner support, which means people have to understand it through and through. And if you're going the Revolution route, which has historical backing, which I'll get into, people have to understand through and through what's happening after the Revolution. Because with a lot of Bolshevik revolutions, they were successful in dethroning the bourgeoisie. And then they were like, okay, revolution over, but how are we supposed to evaluate and allocate our resources? No one knows what to do. Then a strongman comes in and says, I know what to do, takes over the revolution. That's how we get into state capitalists and Soviet. Because love it or hate it, market-based allocation makes sense. The competition, supply and demand, buyers and sellers, tugging and pulling for that equilibrium, it makes sense. We say ECP and it's like a meme and it's been debunked. But people walk out of that not even knowing what the debunk means. They're just happy that they can say that it's been debunked now. I feel like we avoid resource allocation because it's hard. It's hard to wrap your head around. We've always lived in capital, but we have to, and I'll share some models I've been looking into.
I hate the angry black woman stereotype, but I don't hate angry black women. In fact, not only is it okay that black women are angry, I don't think sometimes we're angry enough, because in addition to that intersectional oppression that we're constantly experiencing and then having to justify to everybody else because y'all cannot get it through your skulls that it's real, we're just constantly catching strays. We're not allowed to feel any negative emotion because every negative emotion that we have is perceived as a threat. Our anger, our righteous anger, is perceived as hatred. It's exhausting, it's dehumanizing, and it's unfair. It is okay that Black women be angry without being stereotyped as the angry Black woman. So,
who will the future Karens be? If you go by name popularity.
My first instinct was Jessica. Immediately, Jessica. But I think, hear me out. If we're talking about Karens as they come in their traditional form, who will adopt that title for asking for the manager, calling the police on the Black barbecue? Very Jessica. But we're getting this new strain, right? The girls who share the infographics without reading them all the way through. Bought and read the first couple of pages of White Fragility. Maybe talks too much in Black spaces. Emily. It's Emily. You would think that Emily is a biblical name the way all the kids are named Emily. And I know you know about 4 Emilys off the top of your head. In your contacts, there's Emily A through H in your contacts. I know it.
In my experience, you cannot trust white people who were a part of the alt-right pipeline once, or who had an edgelord phase. To those who don't know what that means, I'll expand more in the comments. While simultaneously having media access to things that were going on at the time. You can pick any time frame, and I can assure you that there was a lot of things going on for minorities. I'm gonna say 2016, for example, because that's what a lot of ex-alt-right pipeline members from Generation Z joke about. Now, if you were down that pipeline in 2016, you had access to media from Standing Rock, from Black Lives Matter, from the Pulse Massacre, from the 2016 election, from Palestine, and I could go on forever. So if they had access to all of that information at the same time as they had access to all of the alt-right information, that means they intentionally made that choice, regardless of how young they were. And I know that there's a lot of white people that exist that have not chosen to be intentionally racist or bigoted in their life. Most of them have fallen into the trap of colonial oppression that we all experience, those passed down from their ancestors, and the society that we live in that's built on white supremacy. And now you brought up a point later on saying that, like, well, brown and Black people can be a victim of the alt-right pipeline as well. There are brown and Black Nazis. But that is a whole other topic. You might not think that if you were just thinking surface level, but if you take a good look at the differences and the different paths they take, there is a grave difference. And them being brown and Black does not make them more forgivable. That's just a whole other topic. And I can tell that you are a minority and a person of color. You said that. Now, I'm not saying these comments to criticize you or demean you. I'm saying this as a warning and to protect you. From personal experience, I had white friends who were a part of the alt-right pipeline at one point but changed, and I forgave them. Big mistake. They were still bigots, just better at hiding it. They treated me like absolute shit. Each and every single one of them. No matter who changed. And I know many people of color who have had the same experiences. Yeah, you are to be wary about all white people, because they are still oppressors. But even more wary of those who chose to actually engage in that impression. Just watch out.
Why are you waiting in our action? What's going on?
None of them even had their badge numbers on.
Yeah, I wonder where their badges are. I want to know if they drink the water when the oil spills. That's what I want to know. I want to know why her hand sits near her taser the way it does. What does she think is going to happen? I wonder why they're so intimidated by so many peaceful people. That guy in the green pants openly admitted that he didn't know treaty law while standing on treaty land. Ignoring the elders here.
We want to keep private.
Anybody got a small packet?
Yeah, that's why I'm They have no morals, only a paycheck.
corrupt system. So, at what point do you admit that you're corrupt? Or let us stand here and get our photos and document what's going on inside.
That's the right way to do things. We should be allowed.
Yeah.
Everybody else is, when there's something going on, everybody else is allowed to document what's going on.
Well, if there's nothing wrong going on, why can't we
And
take
if
pictures?
there's nothing going on wrong back there, why are we not allowed to defend ourselves by taking pictures to show?
Everything is legal.
Everything is legal.
Because we got it. They were breaking OSHA law. And aren't you supposed to uphold that? Did any one of you call OSHA when they were violating that law? Your so-called regulations?
Did you?
And
You guys were
anybody?
standing out there with them while they were violating that law. Yeah.
Yeah.
Protecting this.
Yeah. I saw that too.
Why does Dorian Pandridge's pocket? Either you're on Are you on the Northern Lights Task Force?
Look at that.
Even if you're not, I'm sure that you're here via somebody's orders to come and make sure that their property.
They think that we can't see them through the fence. They're stupid.
They've been peeking over the... Really?
But are you doing the same
Yeah.
thing for the people that have
Look at the little worms.
the water supply is going to be damaged? Don't tell me you haven't heard of Flint, Michigan,
Sounds like they stopped on turns.
where like the
And more
whole
police are
water supply
coming.
was damaged by the lead, and now kids have brain damage, and they still haven't replaced those supplies. So the whole community has to drink bottled water.
I still can't get over the fact that this earth is like actively falling apart because of humans. And we've acknowledged, like, as society, we're fucked. But I'm still expected to go to school. I'm still expected to take out student loans. And maybe just, like, hope I get a okay paying job that's above minimum wage after I graduate. I'm supposed to bring kids into this world. And, like, the only thing we can do as individuals is, like, work together as grassroots organizations to hold corporations accountable. And maybe just, like, hope the billionaires listen to us while they're on vacation in outer space.
How is that possible?
White supremacy isn't morally wrong. White people are smarter. White people did more good than harm by colonizing other countries. African Americans were better off as slaves than they were before they were brought to America. I don't believe these things, obviously. Look at me. I is brown, okay? But lawmakers in the Texan state legislature just filed bills that would make it illegal to teach white supremacy as being morally wrong. So they would essentially teach that the KKK might have been bad for other things, but not because they are white supremacists. They also introduced legislation which would ban any reading requirements to include literature written by POCs and women. Because gosh darn it, guess which side those pieces are usually skewed to? First, they became the victims to ban critical race theory. Now they want to reclaim a place subjugating us.
Do you know what those are white people, by the way. Who are white people? The Egyptians are not African. I'm sorry.
Do you know where Egypt is?
Yes, it's in North Africa.
Okay, stop. You stop right there. You just said that you said the Egyptians are not African.
Are white South Africans African?
Wait. Yes, they are African. See, okay, to be African means you come from the continent of Africa. So if you come from the continent of Africa, that's who you are. So that means you're an African. So and you do know. Do you also deny science that man originated from Africa, or do you say that's false science?
What are you talking about? I mean, what are you referring to?
I'm talking archaeology. I'm talking biology. I'm talking science. In terms of the where did man originate? Where scientists, white scientists.
Egypt was an amazing civilization. It was not created by black Africans. I'm sorry.
It wasn't. Who created it?
People people who are white.
Okay, how are people?
You can actually look at art and they differentiate between races.
No, I gotta ask you a question. How do you
from ancient Egyptian art?
No, because let me know.
Black people, you do know.
Hey,
you do know from science, you can't get black from white. You can get white from black. You do know when it comes to evolution. When it comes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you never studied science?
I see what you're. Yes, I have.
No, so but
I mean, I'm not a scientist.
But man originated in Africa. Yes or no?
That is a consensus. Yes.
Okay.
That's
So if man originated in Africa, which means that they were Africans, then all of a sudden, when you talk about the amazing works of the Egyptians, they were people of color. I know that's a little rough for you to handle, but I know you want to hold on to that, somehow thinking whites built the pyramids, but I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, we did.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Because, first of all, they were building things in Egypt while white Europeans were still in caves. That's a fact.
That's
a fact. Okay,
sure.
I'm still go back to, so you
What's the most, like, chronically online take you've ever seen on the internet?
I have received a comment telling me that it was transphobic to be comfortable in my masculine body as a non-binary person. Like, there is so much to unpack with that take, but I'm gonna focus on TikTok and Tumblr's perception of non-binary people and how damaging it is to the community. This idea that all non-binary people must, fucking mullet, big eyeliner, fucking skinny, white, AFAB. Do you like frogs? Do you like mushrooms? Shut the fuck up. I sometimes feel as if my pronouns are rarely respected because it's like, if you don't look in my bio, you hear my voice and it's like, oh, it makes me so angry. TikTok and Tumblr basically set themselves up for failure when they created this perfect perception of what a non-binary person looks like, and God forbid you don't fit into that box, guess you're not valid. Me being AMAB does not make me any less non-binary, and you would think that that's a given, but for some people, it's just, Do you like frogs or mushrooms? I'll kill you. What the fuck?
One of the most shocking things for me about going to college was finding out how rich people talk about other people. Don't get me wrong, there are some really nice people with lots of money, but those are people who happen to be rich. I'm talking about rich people. Now, I go to a private school, and one of the things that I saw during my first semester was rich kids just crapping on anyone who had ever gone to public school in their entire life. Now, me, having only been to public schools, is just like, but there's just so much classism and elitism. And then they get really salty with when kids from the background that they're making fun of make it to the exact same place as them. And that's where a lot of them start screaming, affirmative action. But the best part is affirmative action is illegal in the state I go to college in.
I have such an easy fix to this problem. I've been arguing for people to stop identifying with this term white and instead with a cultural term. And many people say, well, I don't know where my ancestors are from, so I'm not going to claim the ancestry that I have back in Europe because that's disrespectful. And you're 100% right. So here's what I do. When I'm outside of the United States, I'll tell people I'm American. When I'm in the United States, I'll say I'm from the Midwest or from the Chicagoland area. So my culturally, is Midwestern or Chicago-ish. And you may not see that as a culture at first, but let me tell you, when I moved to Florida for college, you would be crazy to say that there isn't a separate culture in Florida than there is in the Midwest. So tell me where culturally you identify as, and if you're part of the homogenized white American population, then that's just what it is. But by identifying with your culture, don't distance yourself from your whiteness. You still have white privilege, but now you're recognizing it and recognizing how it is really damaging to your identity.
I am trans. That feels like so cringy to say, but it's relevant. In high school, I tried so hard to get out of gym class because it was horrible and traumatic and obviously like a stupid class. So I was like, let me at least try and get an accommodation for this and try and get out of it. And although I was ultimately successful, the school fought me like so hard on it. I had to attend all these meetings with like all the assistant principals and all of like the school psychologists and my guidance counselor. There was this one meeting where I was sitting at the round table with all of the mental health professionals in my school. And I was literally like, please, can we just come up with any sort of accommodation? This is literally giving me so much anxiety. It is ruining my mental health and it is making me want to die. It is making me want to die. So can we figure something out, please? Because I want to die. And their response to that was literally, I'm sorry you feel that way, but if we made an accommodation for you, we would have to make an accommodation for everyone who feels that way as well. God forbid, right? Public school.
Maybe the reason so many of us can't see ourselves living to the years fucking, I don't know, like 30 or 45 is because we literally might have this brain blockage Like, this human intuition that we are not gonna see those years. Like, try to visualize the year like 2045. It looks like shit, doesn't it? I bet it looks like shit. I bet the water looks like shit. I bet the weather is shit. I bet the food tastes like shit. I bet the air smells like shit. I just know it's gonna look like shit. And when we were younger, they literally told us, like, by the year 2050, like, everything's gonna go to shit. So I feel like we literally all, because they warned us, we all created this brain, like we stopped, they were like, oh shit, I'm not gonna see those years. I guess there's no point of even thinking about it.
For Americans, this feels like a front in the struggle against communism. But for Cubans, it feels like Batista is an extension of American imperialism, and the guerrilla war a continuation of their long fight for freedom. Now, the communists win in 1959 and Castro takes power. The US, fearing communism's expansion, sets up the embargo to strangle Cuba's economy, tries to assassinate Castro, and even, in the disaster known as Bay of Pigs, sends in CIA-trained Cubans to try to take over the island. Castro turns to the Soviets for help, and in 1962 they nearly start World War III when the US blocks Soviet efforts to put nuclear missiles in Cuba. The incident scares everyone enough that things settle into a tense but basically peaceful status quo. Over time, ordinary Cubans are squeezed between the US embargo and Castro's dictatorship. In 1980, Castro tries to relieve some political dissent by briefly allowing Cubans to leave the island, and 125,000 arrive in Florida. No one realizes it at the time, but this adds a completely new dimension to the conflict. It's now also about the internal Cuban battle between Castro versus Cuban dissidents, which plays out through American politics. Now, this becomes really important in the 1990s. After the Soviet Union collapses, President Bill Clinton, seeing Cuba poses no threat, wants to end the conflict. And so does Castro, who can't count on Soviet aid anymore. But Cubans in America, who suffered terribly at Castro's hand, want to see him fall and push for keeping the embargo. In the middle of this fight, in 1996, Cuba shoots down 2 private planes chartered by Cuban-American activists. There's a big backlash in the US, and Clinton backs down. 20 years later, President Barack Obama tries again to end the conflict. By now, Americans don't really support the embargo. Lots of Cuban Americans are now economic migrants rather than political exiles, so they want openness. Fidel is getting old, and in 2008, hands power to his brother Raul, who knows the country needs to change. The US and Cuba start secret talks in 2013. The new Pope, Francis, helps negotiate. In 2014, they reveal their agreement to end the conflict, and the next year, Obama becomes the first president to visit since Calvin Coolidge in 1928. The US and Cuba have never really had normal relations until now, and that's crucial to understanding why it took so long for this to happen. So much has passed between the two countries over the past century, and the US has at times treated Cuba as more of a colony than it's a real country. It's a lot to get over.
Just a daily reminder that these two here, Betty White and Queen Elizabeth, these are the years that they were born, 1922 and 1926. Meanwhile, these two here, Anne Frank and Martin Luther King, were both born in 1929. So since these two are still alive, there's no reason that these two shouldn't still be alive as well. Just felt like highlighting that today since some people like to talk about how long ago all of that was.
So I have a question, and I'm happy for someone to direct me to where I could seek this out. But it's mostly from Indigenous TikTok that I would need the answers from. So please either guide me to them or where I would find these resources from actual Indigenous people. I completely and utterly support, the idea of land back, that it's Indigenous land. But I was interested in knowing, how does that work with the Black people from the diaspora that should have also received reparations? Like, in a world where you get land back, what then happens what does land back look like for Black people? Because if we're all trying to work towards something and solidarity is needed, I'm just trying to see how it all fits in and ties in. Is that possible to answer?
Hi, my name's Corey. I'm Indigenous and I totally want to help you out with this question, so I'm going to make this 3-minute long video and I hope I can help. In my opinion, the idea of land back does not remove people from the land that they're living on. I think this idea of forcing people out of their land inherently goes against Indigenous values. I know the idea of land back is a little scary and kind of overwhelming, so let's talk about it a little, and specifically what it means to Black Americans who are not Indigenous to the Americas. First, I want to say that there are Black Americans who are Indigenous to the Americas. I think acknowledging that there are people who are both mixed Black and Indigenous is a very important step. But that being said, this is a really interesting thing. We all know that some Indigenous nations participated in slavery, specifically the 5 civilized tribes. There were other nations who took in escaped slaves. These freedmen were considered brother and sister to these nations. Their shared trauma and shared colonization brought them together instead of separating them. And I think it is beautiful that you mentioned solidarity in your question, and so I want to talk about that. In my opinion, reparations and land back go hand in hand. Theoretically, giving people the chance to return to their ancestral homeland does not remove other people. It would give Indigenous nations the right to self-determination. It would properly honor treaty law, but it would not be the removal or extraction of a people from their homelands. Obviously, there will be some circumstances where there will be the removal of people from their homelands. I'm looking specifically at Martha's Vineyard, which is multi-million-dollar mansions built over Indigenous grave sites. For those who would like to do more research on that, the Champacotaguapanog, or the people who were there before Martha's Vineyard, was Martha's Vineyard. And like I said, that's more of a relocation instead of an extraction by force. My nation's sovereignty cannot exist without Black reparations. Black natives are an incredibly beautiful part of our community, whether it is because they were accepted by our communities historically, or because they became mixed with Indigenous people as time went on. We have an absolutely beautiful history of sticking together. My freedom is intrinsically tied with your freedom, and my reparations and your reparations, they go hand in hand. I know we love to make jokes about like kicking people off their land and reverse manifest destiny, but even if that was the end goal, I could not imagine doing that to Black Americans who are part of the diaspora. The mindless deportation of people back to homelands that they are unfamiliar with is cruel and is directly against Indigenous values. I also want to say that Indigenous communities have a lot of work to do and unlearning our anti-Blackness, and I truly believe that the best way forward is solidarity between our communities. This country was built on stolen land by stolen people, and it's important that we recognize that. Our ancestors built this country. You have a place here.
I'm fully vaccinated, so that means that because my entire family is fully vaccinated too, I don't need to wear a mask at work. But some interesting things have happened because of this. This is the best way to explain it. Because I don't wear a mask, people think that I'm anti-vax, and so therefore I've become like a sleeper agent for normal people. Like, people would just come up to me and start spewing bullshit. Like, this one woman was like, you know, this vaccine's turning people into robots, you agree? I'm like, okay, yeah. Yes. I want to see where you go with this, so yes.
And then she's like, you know, when you get the shot, they stick this microchip in your arm, and it starts to inflect your bloodstream with little particles. And I'm like, because of these little micro things, it makes people's skin magnetic. And so therefore they can stick like coins to their arms.
But here's my favorite one of all time. This is my really good one. This guy comes up to me once and he's like, COVID-19 is a lie from the government.
And although you might be thinking, yes, this is a lot of people's idiotic belief, he continues by saying that it came from space. 2 asteroids hit the Earth 3 years ago. Just about, almost to the day. These 2 asteroids came from the moon that Mars used to have that got crashed into it and broke into pieces. So these asteroids came to our Earth. And I think that COVID-19 is the product of a germ warfare that aliens had. That theory is crazy, but it's kind of fucking cool. It's a little cool.